How's your beard technology?
My beard technology is pretty good internally. I mean, I'm losing pigmentation in my beard. So, I mean, some system is quote unquote failing in there. But I feel like bright and reflective surfaces on a face are actually kind of helpful and break up um, the more monochrome aspects of a human face. So in that way, it's doing well.
I saw a good friend recently I hadn't seen in a few months, and I've gotten in and out of having a beard. I had a big beard, I don't know, 7 years ago, and then I trimmed it a bit, and definitely had a beard for most of COVID, and got kind of scraggly. And saw her recently, and it's such a major shift for folks,
Yeah.
for you know men and people who can grow beards, whether we have them or not. Even with a good friend, it was like she was sort of shocked to still see me without one, because in her mind, I think she had stored all these memories of me with one. So I was like, yeah, no, I actually haven't had a beard for quite a while now. But
Yeah, it can be deeply traumatizing for children, for people on the spectrum. It can actually be like wildly discombobulating. I think for that same reasons, that like setting a pattern and then rupturing it as relates to identity.
yeah, it's the shape,
Yeah,
the form. Your whole form has shifted.
yeah. I just experienced a version of that this week when my gastroenterologist's office finally went mask optional. I don't know, somewhere the past couple of weeks. And the people behind the desk who I've interacted with on multiple occasions over like multiple occasions over about 6 month period, maybe longer. I finally saw everybody's faces. I'd never seen their faces before. Had no idea what they looked like, other than a vague sense of what they looked like. They knew my face because I usually came in without a mask, and then we typically had a conversation before masking. And yeah, it is discombobulating. It's a strange maneuver. I don't know if that gets us to the question of the day. What is it? Like, is technology evil? Is that the question?
What was our question?
This is totally classic. I'm Brendan McNamara. That's the person not talking right now is Andy Swindler. And every week we interrogate anything we're curious about, which especially any area in which people seem especially interested, divided, or inflamed, so as to better model, I think, for ourselves in our own daily existence, as well as for anyone listening, how imminently possible it is to have conversations with people about things that other people may tell you to be afraid of, and have no fear. Curiosity is here. So this week we're asking a question for the second time, part two, following up last week's episode on technology. But I just can't remember if the question was, is technology bad, or is technology evil? Or is technology good? I don't even remember which the actual question is. It's our show, so we get to decide.
Let's just go with, is technology?
I mean, yes. All right, good episode. Good episode.
We're done. Yeah, this is a pretty discombobulated kind of day, so maybe that's some kind of segue into how is technology impacting us. I feel scattered a lot of the time, and I'm prone to instinctively attribute some of that to technology, and I feel like that's what some of the research reveals.
Certainly exacerbating, I think, pre-existing conditions is my best guess as to what's happening. Almost like a virus. I think it's no coincidence we refer to things that cycle via technology and seem to multiply as viral. I think ideas can be viral. Obviously viruses are viral, but yeah, I think that effect is viral as well. I think if you have a predisposition towards ADHD or depression, anxiety, neurodivergence of any sort, I do think at least our social media technologies and like internet technologies seem to be exacerbating that to a phenomenal degree. I mean, I think we're the most I mean, I think we're the most like drug prescribed, drug addicted culture, at least in our nation's history, I believe. And I include drugs that doctors prescribe alongside cocaine and crack. I don't really make that big of a distinction between those, because I don't really think there is that huge of a distinction between them. There's nuanced distinctions, but not grand distinctions.
Depends on which population we're trying to demonize in the moment.
Yeah, to me, I would gently demonize all drug doing populations, including myself amongst them.
Yeah, as somebody who has done a lot of drugs and still does some, yeah, I feel like I generally subscribe to the idea that, you know, it's some kind of dissociation, numbing, you know, there's probably something deeper I'm avoiding or trying to tune out, at least for the moment, and taking a shortcut to get there.
Yeah. A shortcut to zoom in. Yeah.
Well, simultaneously doing deeper healing work ongoing and with some success. But yeah, I mean, my focus of technology for many, many years has been around social technology, to broadly categorize it. That would certainly include social media, social networking, even the technology we're using right now, Zoom, anything like that, phone, the cell phone, you know, the carrier pigeon, the telegraph, you know, depends on how far back you want to roll it. And I have come to a similar conclusion in that category about technology. I mean, in general, of course, technology is a tool. That doesn't mean it's totally neutral or benign all the time, certainly.
No.
But in the case of social technology, I do feel like what you just said is true. Like usually it's just exaggerating or exacerbating tendencies we already have as humans. And it also, in certain environments, cuts out lots of layers, cuts out lots of emotional awareness and reckoning.
Yeah, and I think we've tried to solve that in the social platforms with like emoticons and then emojis and like whatever GIFs and memes, as like trying to constantly expand our vocabulary so as to provide some measure of filling in all those gaps of which we still haven't really figured out how to do, you know. And we have video chat, which is like, oh, in some ways you're like, oh, shouldn't that overcome so many of them? But you know probably even better than I do, like what a shoddy form of communication as compared to in-person communication. You know, a video chat is, you know, you're like, oh, good, you can solve all the facial recognition and you can hear the tonal shifts, all those sort of things that are absent from text-based communication. But it's still nowhere near presence. And I don't think it'll ever get there, honestly. Who knows, it could lap it, but it's never going to match it exactly, only because I think there's far too many things, ineffable elements to communication. Pheromonal, electrochemical, I don't even know. I mean, there are so many of just question marks as to like what the heck is going on when we're communicating. I like it in some ways. You know, I've obviously grown up with technology. Like I think we both had computers from pretty early ages. I think my first was an Apple IIc, but I'd already played on my dad's like Macintosh at that point, like the first era Macintosh. And the one, you know, the like boxy one with the little, you know, came up a little smiling monitor, black and white. And I like
maybe like an SE or
it was and I've always liked the cleanliness in some ways removed from Congress. So I think for a long time I've had like an overly idealistic, I think we both have an overly idealistic sense of where this type of communication technology was going to be able to take us. You know, that we'd be able to essentially be like an anarchists United Nations, that the whole world would be able to really like get together, conference over problems, really reason things out thoroughly with links and blah, 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 and really figure stuff out. And like, and I mean anarchist in the sort of the formal sense, I guess, meaning like new forms of interconnected self-governance or whatever, self-governance meaning communal governance, but without a centralized government. I was like, oh, in some ways the internet can provide that for us. Like it's sort of our pre-Bitcoin, once you have social media, you're like, oh my gosh, we're not going to need anybody. We can, anything, right? Police action, quote unquote, police action, fire fighting, international travel, bartering. It was like that there was so much hope and possibility in early, I think, especially by the time Facebook came around. And I feel like I was like, oh, wait, people are in on it now. Whereas before, even the MySpace, Friendster, blah, 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 it felt very small, even just of the population that had technology available to them, which is a relatively small percentage of the world. But I was like, well, we can figure that out later. We figure cost to be able to distribute this to everyone. This could be a unifying force. And I think some people still feel that way. But my initial hope, I think, has died a death of 1,000 cuts at this point.
I'm there with you.
Yeah.
And I was, I had a digital agency when social media was sort of coming of age in 2007 or so. And attempted to make that into a service, like a billable service, and in some ways was successful, and ended up being a lot of like training, because I just believed in everything you just said, and like how it's not about us necessarily doing this for you, it's about empowering you to do it. And that was interesting, but there was also a strange era of people, in a professional sense, people often were very dismissive about it, because it was confusing. It was so accessible that people were very confused about why they should pay anything for it. Or pay anybody to teach them about it. And they were like, well, my cousin can do that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Go that route. So it became, in my experience and a lot of people I knew, just a very hard thing to offer as a professional service, because for lots of reasons. And now, I don't know. Yeah, obviously since then, that's been, how many years? 16 years. The whole thing's just turned into a huge monetization network. And, in some ways, I guess it is neutral in the sense that maybe the algorithms, to my understanding, are designed to just feed on our attention.
Yes.
And so to some extent, you could say, well, the defense, I suppose, is like, well, hey, we're feeding it, we're making those choices. But I don't think that's entirely fair or accurate, given that they are preying on how human attention works, and how our brain, like what our attention goes to. And I don't think any of them could plead ignorance as to not understanding those factors, when they can literally see everything we're clicking on.
It's like, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny. Well, and obviously with social media, we've seen them deliberately confess, or we've seen direct evidence of manipulating that, well, even onto Google or whatever. I just saw recently that Google's Google News was, its bias was recently rated left-leaning by All Sides, which is one of, I'd say, 3 or 4 like media bias organizations that I regularly reference when I'm just trying to get a handle on like what I'm reading, especially if it's a source I'm not that familiar with or whatever. So then we know, and this is maybe part of my thesis, is the problem with technology may, like you said, or we've been talking about, may not be technology itself, but whoever's using it, the programmers, and I think in some ways that little kernel of thought is why I continually return to hope. And I was like, well, no, it's not the problem. It's just how we're using it. And I think over the past 3 years has really completely crushed my hope on it, being that I was like, oh, no, it's not only just how we're using it, it's how we're being used by those programming it, which is also, I think, fosters my general skepticism around AI as it's developing. And again, the algorithm is feeding me a ton of stories on biased AI bias. So obviously, because I click on them and read them. So they're like, cool, we'll give you more of the stuff you like to click on and read. But I am fascinated by that. But to me, I was just like, oh no, the more comprehensively integrated technology we build with our own nature and or biases built into them, in some ways, I don't think human beings are like a net positive contributor as a species. So I was like, oh, the net of this, if nothing else, is going to be negative. Just being how everything else has played out in my life, of all
Yeah,
the
we
things that I'm hopeful about, you know.
yeah, we were we were just chatting about that. Um, I mean, first of all, this is a really critically important time. I mean, I do have some friends who really are so much deeper in this space than I am in terms of AI ethics, and
Yeah.
it's like what we are building now is the foundation for so much will is already being built on top of the foundation that's built in the last few years, and it's and I my limited understanding of how it works is like it's not going to be easy to go back and untangle that, right? It's sort of these
Yeah.
layers are built on top of each other and kind of expanding from there. So you're right. There's no question whatsoever that we're building all of our biases into these AIs and algorithms, and what we were just chatting about with people are terrified, that of AIs taking over, and it's like you and I are hopeful but cynical about the human species as a whole, and it's like, really, what are we comparing it to? Like, what do we like?
Yeah.
Why are we so certain they're going to do a worse job than we are at
Yeah.
governing ourselves and distributing resources and
Yeah.
thinking critically?
I
Um,
know. Is it going to be worse than us? Is the question. If it is going to take over. I think, to me, my assumption, I could be wrong, is that I'm not going to live to see AI really even take over in any functional sense at all, but that its influence on our society is going to grow increasingly marked over the next number of decades. But as with social media doing, I think, a very similar thing to our society, and the internet doing a similar thing to our society 20 years, whatever, 10, 15 years before that, is it is going to be a tool in the hand of those who run it, essentially. I think that's what we've seen recently with like the Twitter files, right? Or Meta testifying before Congress, or like whatever, reveal, whistleblowers about Google's bias and stuff. So you're like, oh my, we're being heinously manipulated to a degree I think everyone kind of sort of had a vague sense of. Or what was that? The Social Dilemma movie, I know, is super popular amongst various and sundry people I know, that were like, wow, we are being hilariously manipulated by this technology externally, let alone by our own predilections, kind of manipulating ourselves. And so I assume AI is going to be very similar, that basically whoever programs the AI is going to consciously, to some degree, and probably even subconsciously in multiple ways, program it to benefit themselves and or the future that they desire. So I think that's what and I guess that's the big, I think we're at a crux point where we're sort of like, I see so many more people unplugging from technology in a lot of ways, even generationally. Like my little brother, he's like just turned 26. He doesn't drive. He texts me twice a year. He's on social media. He posts things 4 times a year. It's just like he's kind of a Luddite or whatever. And he makes like guitar pedals and stuff like that. So like he uses technology, but in terms of like these sort of social technologies, I know a lot of people are pursuing them, but I see a lot of people turning to homesteading and just being like, this is not, I can't deal with this anymore. This is not going anywhere good. I still
yeah,
like,
no,
I like getting in the scrum and trying to see if I can bend the flow of the river with a single stick kind of thing. But
yeah, there is a resistance. I mean, what was more exciting in our generation than like getting your driver's license? I mean,
yeah,
because that represented, at least for me, just that was freedom. And I mean, it was funny, I was driving like 2 years before that in a little town in Missouri, but there was still the moment of like, oh, I can actually do this
yeah,
publicly. So it's funny, I'm not very like immersed in this, but I just heard this term the other day, and it's interesting to look up. um this idea of technological singularity. Are you familiar with this?
yeah.
And maybe you know more, but this is an interesting quote from Ray Kurzweil, who predicts paradigm shifts will become increasingly common, leading to, quote, technological change so rapid and profound it represents a rupture in the fabric of human history. And Kurzweil believes that the singularity will occur by approximately 2045.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense. I mean, I feel like the tear has already begun. I think the internet was the beginning of the tear. And then I think for me, I saw the tear clearly in this rupturing asunder of human Congress in the first time I found out how much of the internet usage was pornography. And then I was like, oh, we're doomed.
Oh, it drove so much technological innovation in the video,
Yeah.
video realm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, it's like, yeah, right. In that way, it's like the NASA of the internet. But even just in terms of like percentage of use, that
Oh,
like
yeah.
still the most of the internet use is pornographic. You're like, what? Oh no! I mean, literally, it's like we think we're these. I think it's hilarious because in some ways it's like, look at what we've innovated, the interconnectivity of the world. This is like the dream of the philosophers in Athens as they like whatever, as they stroll through the streets and argued in the streets that like, what if you could argue in the streets and really come to understanding of human nature with anyone in the world, everyone in the world. I mean, this is transcendent humanism, right? This is Tower of Babel stuff. And then to sort of look under the hood and be like, okay, and it turned us into chimpanzees masturbating in the corner. Oh no.
Did you ever watch The West Wing back in the day?
I've not my RT, my wife, has gone through it, I think twice. I've seen at least probably like a season and a half's worth of the show.
Yeah, I mean, Sorkin, I think his name has come up. He could certainly be sort of another kind of, progressive soothing agent, I guess. But I just remember this. It's sort of towards the end, I think. There's Leo McGarry, the chief of staff, had some quote, and it was something along the lines of, somebody was raving about the internet and how it was the biggest, advance in human history or whatever. And yeah, his response was something like that. He was just like, yeah, no, it's really just a more efficient way to distribute like pornography and maybe fake news or whatever he said. And I remember at the time really revolting against that, shouting at my TV, and I was like, God damn it, he was right.
I know, it's so cynical. It's just that, like, it's so cynical that you're like, well, maybe not. You're like, maybe we can do something about it. And then over time, sort of like, oh gosh, no. But again, it's technology throughout the ages, as we've said a couple times now, the general thesis here, it is just an amplifier. It's an amplifier of energies. And so it's kind of a revealer of like coordinate energies. I mean, we are a species that yearns to reproduce. So it is no surprise that we are especially all impacted by that. I think the internet fosters, pornographic use specifically because of its dehumanization of all human beings, so that it becomes easier to sort of like just look at a person as a body or whatever, that kind of thing. But as we've seen, and I think especially social media, the enhancement of dehumanization via social media, which I think for me, at least in my lifetime, reached a peak in the past 3 years, both politically and then sort of in this sort of fascist sense, meaning where the government was directly manipulating social media to like vilify particular types of people or whatever. So then I was like, oh no. To me, once the government got in, like this finding out that they were this integrally involved, FBI, CIA, the White House, various and sundry politicians sending emails, that sort of thing, I was like, oh, we're pretty much doomed. You know what I mean? Where I was like, there's again, just speaking of like once certain entanglements are made, you're just like, it's just a no-go. It's like when you when you're reeling in a fishing line, once a fishing line gets like too entangled on itself, then you're just like, all right, we have to cut it. Like I could try it, I could sit here for 4 hours, but you know what, even after the 4 hours, I probably end up gonna breaking it anyway, so let's cut it. We got to start over. Like in some ways I was like, I can understand if there's some Weather Underground style terrorists out there who are like, we have to EMP all of the essential, I don't even know how the internet works, obviously, but like we need to EMP every central server that keeps the internet alive. We need to kill the internet. And it's kind of like let's see what happens. Like maybe that'll be we need some sort of restart. But
yeah, that'd be fascinating. But it's like we're already so dependent. I mean, how many phone numbers do you know by heart anymore?
Yeah, I know. Or even just map it, literally driving around town.
We're gonna have to pull out MapQuest.
Yeah.
No, you're like, no, you don't get it. The internet's broken.
No,
Maps. I mean maps. Actual paper maps.
Yeah. when I first moved to Los Angeles, there was like literally like, it's the first thing anyone gives you there. What's it called? Thomas Guide. And it was like is that what it's called? Anyway, it was literally like a fat, super thick, fat map, felt like a textbook, where it was a flippable map of the entire Los Angeles area. And it was kind of considered in the sense, that's when I moved in like 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. And that was like an essential element of living there. And I remember probably in 2010 or 11, I finally threw it away because I was like, well, I mean, it's too late now.
And that's a kind of technology, right?
It is. Yeah. I think that was in some ways, and obviously at the time, the people tried to restrict the printing press as well, because they're like, what are we going to amplify with this? And how quickly, of course, with that process, did we produce divisive material, quite pretty soon. So that's the sort of sad thing.
So I want to admit, I guess, or not admit, celebrate publicly, that I have now been off of internet porn for more than 5 months.
Yeah.
For all 3 of our listeners. And yeah, that was a hard damn thing to break. I mean, that is tricky. That is a deep addiction. And I looked into some of the way that programs the brain, which is true of lots of internet technology and things, but maybe more true in what it's the subject matter, right, is getting to parts of our biology that are just so deep. So yeah, that's been a remarkable journey for me. And part of it, there's the kind of more abstract ethical considerations, like so much porn, probably supports human trafficking. But then there's just the more personal ones, like, how am I showing up in my intimate relationships?
Yeah.
And how is this diminishing that or distracting me from that? And that's helping. It's helping to be away from it.
I think that's a huge element of, I think what I often think of is like the incremental or individual basis healing method, instead of EMPing the internet, is how do we foster like individual accountability of behavior on the system? Now, the system is already manipulated. I've begun to notice this with Instagram, where it'll be like, would you like to look at this? And there's some stuff on Instagram that is full on porn, like it's basically like pretty much essentially like zoomed in porn. There's a lot of like memes like that. There's a lot of women, I find, at least the stuff that they're sending to me. And I was just like, this is recent too, in the past like 4 to 6 months, has it's just been like pops up and you're like, oh, things you would like. And it was like jujitsu videos and basketball highlights and tattoos, and then these sort of like porny things. And so I know I'm being directly manipulated to pursue that, but dehumanization across the board, or ethical congress in the internet. I don't even know if I was just thinking about this week. I was like, is this even taught? Like, is this taught in basic education now? I mean, it sort of should. Like, my kids had a little bit version of this at their public school, of like sort of ethics of like computer use, from like a kindergarten and first grade sort of sense, you know what I mean? But the ethics broadly of intercommunication, I was like, is anyone even helping anybody? Is anyone sort of like forming these constructs in such way that I was like, I know I felt bereft of guidance, other than like divine guidance on how to navigate the myriad temptations, and then the ease too. I think pornography is just whatever, the tip of the spear of the problematic usage of technologies in terms of the internet. So it's just a good one to reference, and I think both men and women can relate to that. That it is it is quite literally addictive, and it's so easy. It's so phenomenally easy. Like, there's still an adult bookstore in Raleigh that I drive by on a regular basis, which is fascinating to me. It's like a pretty big building too. But I was just like, that's what it used to be like. You'd have to go to I don't think, or, there's mail order eventually, but like, even in my lifetime, that you'd have to go particular stores where you could buy tapes, or DVDs, or then you'd have to go to this like windowless building, and kind of, some people might go there without shame, but the building is designed to provoke shame. You can tell adults only, and there's no windows, and like, Nobody is like walking in and chatting at the front door ever. People are like getting in and getting out, you know what I mean? Their head kind of down or whatever. They're like, I'm, because at some point, you're skipping a step ultimately, right? You're just doing an imperfect thing, right? Perhaps you're indulging some sort of physiological need or an emotional need or coping with existence, coping with loneliness. There's all sorts of like things that are
Right.
completely understandable. But it makes it a sort of online makes it very easy to like skip the shameful beginnings. Although I was listening too that this happens chemically, this becomes a masturbation or ejaculative podcast, but that especially for men, that this sort of like dopamine run, that sort of feelings of disgust after the sort of dopamine drop are very prevalent amongst men, just based on the orgasmic process. In not just masturbation though, like at home, although it's worse there, but it also happens in sex generally as well. And that can sort of be, what's the word? Muted or even sometimes even nullified, depending on the actual connection. Like if you were intimately connected with someone you like exhaustively trust, you know what I mean, in a relationship, that you can sort of tamp down or reduce that effect. But that essentially sends us into this like dopamine chase, almost like adrenalized good feeling. And then after, it plummets us down past baseline in terms of our sort of pleasure chemicals. So then we're like, oh,
Right.
We always end up worse than we started every single time.
Which keeps us coming back.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I want the good feeling again, though. I want that again, And it's so funny. Yeah, I was off. I didn't touch, click, look at internet pornography of any sort for 3 or 4 years. I took like 3 or 4 years off of masturbation as well. And then after I got sick, all of a sudden, just like literally having physical weakness led to, in some ways, like a coddling effect of like, Brendan, you deserve a break. You deserve a break. You deserve a break today. You know what? Whatever. Just however you can kind of get through this time. Kind of like softly brought it back, so it became problematic again. So where I've probably visited some degree of porn. I do literary porn a lot or whatever. That was kind of my dominant, like it felt like the gateway drug that I could stay with. Probably, I don't know, in the past year, let's say, what are we in? Or just this year, 6, 7, 8 times or whatever. And it was probably worse last year, or like more frequent last year. But to me, I just say, I know it's weird we got to here, but I do think it's such an excellent crystalline sense of the sort of danger of technology in indulging aspects of oneself that are understandable, but less than ideal. And fascinating too, that like your timing times out with like fostering of a growth of healthy relationship too,
right?
And I don't think that's not in any way coincidental.
No, not at all. I mean, my God, it's given me, what in many ways what porn was attempting to replace and really never did successfully.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's huge, right? And not only like as a whatever, even if I needed a temporary crutch or bridge to sort of get off the addiction,
sure,
but also an extra motivation to to have a healthier relationship with sexuality. I'm reminded of, did you watch Euphoria?
I haven't seen it, no.
A challenging but I think very good show. And at one point, like the main character just flat out says like everybody watches porn, just flat out blanket statement. I was like, and at the time it was true for me, and I was like, huh, is that true for everybody? So yeah, to your point, it's if it is true or even close to true, which I imagine it actually is, like I feel like that we ought to be talking about that.
Oh, absolutely.
If we all have that much in common about one thing, like
yes, Well, it's funny too, and I had this conversation with someone. Oh, I was just reliving this conversation from a year ago, where a friend of mine, we were having a conversation about doing drugs with your kids, and some person was like not liking that. He had a much younger daughter. He's like, what about some people who never do drugs? So it was like, what if your kid could be one of those? So as opposed to just being like, well, since you're going to blank, let's do it together. And he's like, there are plenty of people. And this guy's from New York City too. He's like, there are plenty of people who don't ever do any drugs ever at all. And I was like,
it's actually a thing.
I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I would love to know what percentage of people like have never looked at pornography. I've certainly met a number of them. But like that's the sort of fate. I think it's probably truer than some people think, but that's also like a fatalistic, it tends towards some of the fatalism we're toying with too, where it's like, well, everybody does it. I was like, I think it's important for people to know also that they know that's not true. That whatever you think everyone's doing, that you're like, oh, that's not that great, but everyone does it, you're wrong.
We can two thumbs up. You're absolutely wrong about that.
Yeah. In the
I wanted
absolute sense.
to sort of steer us back to AI. So you mentioned
Yeah.
having an Apple IIc growing up. I did as well. So there's yet another commonality in our
Yeah.
upbringing. And I remember, I'm pretty sure it was on the Apple IIc, or it might maybe one generation later, like the 2GS, but there was this little program we had called Eliza, and it was
Mhm.
a fake psychiatrist. And
Whoa.
or I don't know, maybe not fake, but it it's interesting to sort of think about, and I'm sure there are like very technical like categorizations of AI and
Yeah.
what was really happening. But the whole point was it was just a little chat bot essentially, right? And then you would put in, and it was named Eliza, and you would, and it was just looking for patterns. It had
Yeah.
some pretty rudimentary database, and it would just kind of look for certain keywords and then sort of spit out things. But
Yeah.
it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's more going on technically in terms of pattern matching, but my understanding of a lot of the AI that's happening right now, like generative AI, is it's just the database has gotten vastly bigger because we have so
Yeah.
much more computational power. So now it's looking at hundreds of millions of records and doing pattern matching on that rather than probably a pretty limited database. And what that one was really funny back then in the 80s because pretty much the main thing it was always looking for was the word mother. And
Yeah.
anytime you mentioned mother, it would just suddenly go into this whole script about like, ooh, probably just fed in from a Freud textbook or something. It's like,
Totally.
tell me more about your mother.
Yeah.
But it was like reasonably, parts of it were reasonably believable.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, it's funny because that ties together. I mean, I think that's many people's concern with AI relates to pornography and the indulgence of false human relationships. That if already now that I think we're already in danger of suffering from a curated existence where we only for a number of people that you only interact with people who agree with you within your tribe or whatever. And then what if you could essentially start interacting only with people who were programmed to agree with you or to love you or think everything you do is great. And then even in the realms of deep fake and AI technology there, that you can then have virtual entire relationships with an AI. I mean, I think this has already been sort of flirted with, like Her is a great example of the Spike Jones book.
Very good.
But we're not far from that. I'm assuming the technology already exists, probably just hasn't been quite synthesized. But then AI technology, and then you can also have like virtual or even virtual plus sexual experiences with or whatever. Then you can have like, you can watch pornography or even like webcam style stuff of your AI lover or whatever. I mean, this all just seems like, and again, once the government got involved, I was like, we're screwed, because it's great technology for any government to just pacify a population with pleasure, whatever. I mean, just about every sci-fi writer, well,
Right.
not every, I shouldn't say every, but I mean, we're talking at this point, probably the canon of sci-fi, that has dealt with this exact premise is in the thousands. So no doubt my thinking is colored that way. But it just also seems very obvious. So I think that's why people do it, because it's people have made successful novels out of it. But it's also, I think they also do it because you're like, well, it's happening. The literal our government, the United States, has already used social media to kind of divide people and outcast some people and curate some people to kind of get a feedback loop of and create a false version of reality. So then once you can start doing that more and more comprehensively, or just set a super comprehensive chatbot to fulfill, I mean, a huge chunk of the population's existence, then you've given them, giving them bread and circuses is amateur hour in comparison.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, humans are kind of a pain in the ass. So
yeah, just get them out of the way.
I get wanting the easy, but well, I mean, human relationships, right? It's like I just the other day, like was talking to somebody and I don't know, we were just talking about gaming, and because I've gotten back into gaming after like a 20-year break, more or less. And it's fascinating just looking at that, I don't know. I mean, it counts the hours every time I log in. It's like, and I logged in the other day and I'm like, I'm at like 65 hours. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And I don't want to judge that because I think in many ways it's been a very healthy like release. Like I needed more just
Yeah.
like downtime in my life.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I would generally hold, especially since these are like strategy games, that it's being interactive is probably usually better than TV because at least you're doing something.
Yeah.
Now, there's probably lots of exceptions into content and how it's programming us. But this idea of, preferring, like you're saying, preferring, especially as these get better, and as we're absolutely in our lifetime going to see indiscernible technology, right? Where we can't even tell like who we're interacting with. And then if that robot is programmed to kind of tend to our every whim and every pleasure need, then so like, isn't that tempting? Isn't that alluring versus the complexity and the risk factor associated with real human beings and all of their own trauma and complexities and challenges?
Yeah, if you can deliver a more and more comprehensive virtual deity to human beings, I think that's enormously attractive to the sort of deepest parts of ourselves. And I mean that too. I don't even just, that's why, like as we glance away from pornography, that like if that has some tethers towards the not deep part of ourselves, but also tethers to the deepest parts. And so I think that's the fear I have. Or that I don't even say fear exactly. I was like, that to me seems the inevitability. Just again, out of the past, how the past 3 years have gone and how quickly people dehumanize others. So then I was like, oh snap, then we're in danger once you can already curate your existence that much, once your existence can be curated to really start to eliminate anyone who would oppose you. I was just like, oh gosh, in some ways, maybe it'll make tribes smaller and smaller. So then your interactions maybe will get deeper and deeper with those people who are closest to you. But I think I don't know.
Like rolling back to the Matrix as one of the mothers of modern sci-fi.
Absolutely.
They just, I think one of the reasons that was so successful is they really thought through so many pieces effectively. And one of those was like the whole thing about why this reality? Why the late 90s or whatever the hell it was supposed to be, maybe early 2000s, I don't know, based on the cell phone technology. But like, and then they explain that. They're like, oh, we tried. We gave you a paradise and you rejected it. There must be something about misery that's like essential to the human condition.
You need it.
Damn it.
I mean, I think this is part and parcel to as we have more and more curated or enabled curation of a sort of a self-glorifying existence. Mental health is through the roof because it starts telling you, it's like, there, if you just do this and you do this, you'll have all you need. And it's like, well, this isn't all we need. We actually are primed and shaped by suffering, and we're primed and shaped by adversity. Honestly, I mean, in some ways, like I think that's one of the reasons over the past 3 or 4 years, I just felt like the times demanded it. I've headed deeply into adversity circumstances on a continual basis, because I was like, we cannot stay in this. We can't stay in this place. It's not good for me. It's not good for anybody to stay in the place where you just like say things without response or whatever. I don't know. Social media is a good example where like when people post things and block all comments, or they post things in their stories with no response bar or whatever. And I was like, I don't think that's healthy, man. I don't know. I was like, we need each other, or when you see a thing and you're like, oh, that's kind of a strange and controversial take. And then everyone responding only says, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, hold on a second. I mean, again, speaking about my mother, she is a contrarian. So no doubt I've inherited some of that. My dad is too. So double inheritance. You think I would have punk rocked and rejected it, but I was like, well, it builds in a self-rejecting premise, so it kind of it fosters a continuance. But I was like, we need adversity. We need people to no, but of course you can program that into AI as well. Make sure you disagree and piss this person off like 1/47th of the time. Just enough, not enough to reject it or to unsubscribe, but to just enough. And man, there's just I think there's a crisis of people who are going to stand up against it. So in some ways, I'm like, I think even just talking about this here is important because everyone needs to be as loud as possible as often as possible, as quick as possible, as we're building. I think we weren't loud enough when social media was happening, but now we can kind of see, oh, okay, it seems very reasonable that AI is the next mass reiteration or reorientation of how we interact with one another and receive information, and information is disseminated. So now we better make a lot of noise this time. We got to ask all the questions real loud.
Well, and so I'm a big fan of Black Mirror. We haven't seen any new ones for a while. Although Death, Love, and Robots, I feel like I mix those up sometimes, but it's become a reasonable, actually even more bite-sized like surrogate for me.
Yes, it kind of is, yeah.
But Black Mirror dealt with technology themes that were quite realistic and quite within sight for the most part. There were a couple that maybe a little more far out, but and it's, I like sci-fi anyway, so I'm kind of like into that stuff. But so many people I meet just are like, oh, I can't watch that. I'm like, well, if we can't watch the fictional version of this, then this is gonna all happen, and we're gonna be totally powerless. By then it'll be too late.
I know.
Let's watch the fictional version. If that's hard to
we
watch,
gotta learn those lessons. That's what fiction's for.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What about living it 20 years from now? Whoa, so that always kind of stuns me. And at the same time, I think I get it in a way, because, I was, like we both said, we were privileged and lucky enough to grow up with, personal computers and things in an age when a lot of people didn't. And I've always been into technology. I think I still have the MIDI connector for my musical keyboard from 1988. We tended to be a family that was, always having a lot of those toys. And now I'm becoming more of a Luddite. I don't have any. The only listening device I have is my phone, and I know that's a powerful one, but I'm not into those. I haven't even played with ChatGPT yet. Which is weird. I mean, I'm not even afraid of just using it.
Yeah.
But it's I don't even know. There's something about me that's becoming less interested in even experimenting with the things everybody else is.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. But yes, public service announcement, go watch Black Mirror.
I know that. Well, Black Mirror is one of those shows where I think I finally ended up watching it because of a film student who just wouldn't shut up about it when I was shooting Looking for the Perfect Beat, which is at the time we were trying to make it a feature film / documentary about the low end theory in Los Angeles, kind of an integral beat scene, hip hop and electronic music fusion. Flying Lotus came out of there, et cetera, Gaslamp Killer, Toki Monster. Anyway, some kid was shooting that night, film student, and wouldn't stop talking about the show, and was talking about it. We were outside the restrooms, just kind of waiting for someone to finish so I could pick my camera back up and shoot some more. And then in the restroom kept talking about it. And then out of the restroom kept talking about it. And then we finished our conversation and he turned to someone else and started telling them about it. And I was like, okay, this is wild. And he really got me hooked, because he was like, oh, there's one scene where they don't know how they did it, where someone comes and looks in the mirror at his eye, and he takes this technology out of his head or whatever. And it was but he's like, I don't know how I did it, because the shot swivels around and is shooting. It was you should be able to see the camera. So it's a mind trip, and it's already a mind trip in the thing. So it's 6 layers of mind trip, And so I finally watched it. And then once I watched it, I realized why the kid was trying to be a prophet of it. I was like, oh no, this is a show people need to watch for in the same way you'd recommend a documentary, like the Social Dilemma, right? You'd be like, man, I think you really should watch it. or Super Size Me, or I don't know, Food Inc., or what, you know what I mean? Fast Food Inc. You just it's one of those things where you're oh, this is actually a pretty imperative document. And this is a story, a cautionary, filled with wise, adroit, and actually just well-made cautionary tales that we should go ahead and learn from, so we don't make those mistakes. Which is so hilarious, because most of the time I'm just this is a cool show, you should watch it. Although I think one of the reasons people say, this is my theory, people say they can't watch Black Mirror. Sure, it can wear you down because you're oh no, we're doomed. The first episode of Black Mirror, I can't remember if we said this on the show before, the first episode of Black Mirror is the roughest episode. And if people just started watching Black Mirror and they couldn't get through episode 1, and then they said, I can't watch that, I can kind of understand it. It is almost it's a crucible episode to get
It's
you
grotesque.
into the rest of the series. So I've even recommended this to many people, skip the first episode. Watch the first episode
100.
last. It doesn't matter. It's in sequence. I mean, it's like, I'm sure the people who created it are like, how dare you? You must go through the fire to earn the gold. You must suffer. You must suffer in order to earn something. And I was like, okay, you're probably right in that case. However, I want people to watch it. So I go skip the first episode, man. Just go straight to 2. And even 2 is going to be rough, but like watch 1 when you're done with the whole series and then go back and then.
Or never. Yeah. I'm two
Yeah, or
thumbs
never.
up on that.
Never is
Two
fine.
thumbs up on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's grotesque. It's not even the best like ethical premise. I mean, it's kind of interesting, I guess, but it's just grotesque. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I know my influence by fiction, because I generally think of fiction as more true than nonfiction, is my particular, peccadillo. But I do need to actually, even just, this feels profound. This is like a revelatory moment. This is a breakthrough moment for myself. I have tread so consistently the past 3 or 4 years in the realm of nonfiction. I've read far more nonfiction material, not necessarily books, although I've read way more nonfiction books than typical. I've been trying to go back and forth between the classifications, but just having read like scientific studies and news pieces and think pieces and reporting and journalism, blah, 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 trying to sort of, in some ways, like fight what I felt like was the degradation of all society. But I'm feeling in myself, this is just getting personal as opposed to instructive. I need to head back into the realm of fiction in order to help better than in the ways I've been helping. Only because over this amount of time, I don't think most people care about nonfiction. I actually think most people who even purport to care about nonfiction don't care about nonfiction. All the people I've been arguing with, the thousands at this point, people I've been arguing with the past 3 or 4 years, you'd be like, here's a premise, here's all the evidence for it, and then they still are unconvinced and unmoved. Then I'm like, okay, dude, I thought this was the standard for people, and it's not. But I think story, and it's not only just story, but like story can be profoundly effective. Story and then and a hopeful, motivating idea as well. So not just, and I think that maybe can be the problem with Black Mirror, is like it doesn't necessarily give you the idea of a path out. It's just a warning. It's a beautiful,
Yeah.
By the way, just like technically, and I mean technically, artistically, like it's a genius show. A genius. I think it's one of the greatest sci-fi shows of all time, easily, and or just one of the best television shows I've ever seen. But that's what we need, and I don't have it right now. I barely have the energy to kind of come up with a hopeful enough path through this malaise period. I still feel like I'm stuck in the Watchmen on the walls. Here's the real problems we have. But that is, I think that someone needs to, so I'm giving it to the collective conscious. I'm working on it. Other people need to work on it. Like, what is the hopeful path forward? And I think you offer that with some of your work already in terms of fostering communication, spaces of gathering, spaces of unity, that sort of technology of like, here's a path. And I feel like this podcast is part of it too. It's like, talk to people, get in rooms, virtual or real, talk to people, examine yourself, look at your shadows, look at your shadow self and see where it can be integrated and see where it needs to be denied. And where's hope? Where is your hope? Where's your contribution? And how do you live truer and more beautiful on a day-to-day basis? So that's where this needs to head, because is technology evil? Certainly sometimes.
That's beautiful. I almost want to just end right there. I know we've both read Ready Player One. Ready Player Two does start to get there, or start to at least kind of untangle it in a way that reminds us why that direction was not the direction to go. I don't want to say any more than that. But what another author that I'm really just starting to get into is Octavia Butler. In terms of the Afrofuturism, for that exact reason. You know what, similarly, especially deep dive into racial justice and inequity, and I think it's important to look at lots of authors and history and sort of turn that on its head. And at the same time, that doesn't tend to leave, that only like that brings us up to now, and now is not great.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
like, where are we going? You know, where,
Yeah.
you know, so I appreciate you, the nod towards my
Yeah.
work. And I can sometimes be an annoying optimist.
No, it's good, man. I mean, we listen, everyone out and listening to our words, you need to have something approaching a universal theory of existence. This is not, we are not in a moment of human history, and it's not where you can easily function without one. I think the tides are pushing far too adamantly in all sorts of different directions. And again, we saw this in the pandemic period that we're still in, but in the force of the wave, how quickly, if you do not have a premise upon which you are functioning as some sort of highest goal, some sort of highest ideal, some sort of actual like comprehensive ethic, then you will absolutely, by and large, get caught up in whatever the loudest pervasive consensus is, or even sense of consensus, delivered consensus is. And that's not the way. That's not the way for us as a species, and it's not the way for you or me as an individual. So
let's work on that inner technology.
Yes, indeed. Inner technology. That's it.
All right. I love you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for communicating with me via this technology.
You too.
Love you.